my dear. Come sit with me. The fire is low tonight, and the wind outside is colder than my bones. You see these walls? They have heard everything, laughter, tears, prayers whispered in the dark. And now I want them to hear my story one more time before they crumble away with me. When I was your age, I lived in a little wooden house at the edge of the village. Oh, it was nothing like the homes you see today. The roof leaked when it rained, the windows rattled when the wind blew, and the floors creaked with every step. But that house, that poor little house, it was alive. Every corner was filled with the sound of voices, the clatter of pots, the smell of bread, the soft hum of lullabies. We were not rich, no. In fact, we were as poor as a family could be, without sleeping in the fields. Most nights, supper was nothing more than a pot of thin soup and a crust of bread so hard you had to soak it in milk before you could chew it. Shoes were a luxury we shared between us. In winter, my brothers and I tied rags around our feet to keep out the snow. And yet, despite the hunger, despite the cold, I never remember feeling unloved. That house, drafty and small as it was built on love stronger than stone. I had 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and together we were like sparrows in a nest, always noisy, always hungry, always pressed close against each other for warmth. My eldest brother, Matteo, was the responsible one, always looking out for the rest of us. My sister Rosa had a laugh so sweet that even the neighbors came to hear it when she sang. And me? I was the quiet one, always watching, always dreaming. Our days were filled with chores, of course. The boys worked with father in the fields, and we girls helped mother wash, cook, mend, and carry water from the well. But there were moments of magic, too. Summer evenings when we ran barefoot through the fields, chasing fireflies until the stars came out. Winter mornings when we woke to frost patterns on the windows that looked like angel wings. And always, always, the warmth of family gathered around one table, sharing whatever little we had. Back then, my child, poverty was not shameful. Everyone was poor. What mattered was that you stood by each other. And we did, or so I thought. But life has a way of testing families. Hunger is one kind of trial. Opportunity is another. And sometimes opportunity can be sharper than hunger. I still remember the day Matteo told us he was leaving. He had just turned 19, tall and serious, with hands calloused from labor and eyes filled with restless fire. He came home one evening, sat down at the table and said, "There is nothing for me here. If I go abroad, I can work, I can send money, I can build a better future for all of us." The room fell silent. Mother dropped her spoon. Father stared at him as though he had spoken treason. My little sisters began to cry. I sat frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. Leaving? Leaving us? It felt like someone had taken the sun from the sky. That night, I lay awake, listening to my parents whisper in the next room. Mother pleaded, "He's just a boy. He cannot survive out there alone." Father sighed. "He is already a man. If he stays, he will starve with us. If he goes, perhaps he will change all our fates." Their voices faded, but I heard Mother weep until dawn. And so Matteo left. With one suitcase, a borrowed coat, and more courage than sense, he boarded a train that would carry him away from everything we knew. I remember running alongside the tracks, waving until my legs gave out. He looked back once, and I saw tears on his face. That was the last time I saw him as a boy. For months there was nothing. No word, no letter, no sign that he was alive. We feared the worst, that he had starved, that he had been robbed, that he had died alone in a strange land. Mother prayed every night. Father smoked in silence, and I stared at the empty chair at our table, feeling as if a piece of me had been cut away. Then one day a letter came. The envelope was thin, the paper foreign, but the handwriting was Matteo's. "I am working," he wrote. "The days are long, the nights are cold, but I think of you always. Enclosed is a little money. Buy something warm for the children. Inside were a few bills, crumpled and damp from his sweat. Mother kissed them as though they were holy relics. That letter changed everything. Suddenly there was hope. If Matteo could make it, perhaps the others could too. And slowly, one by one, my brothers and sisters began to dream of leaving as well. First Rosa. With her sweet voice and restless heart, she said she wanted to see the world, to sing in cities where no one knew her name. Then my younger brother, who had no patience for the soil and wanted machines instead of plows. One after another, they looked beyond the horizon, and one after another they left. Our house grew quieter with each departure. Fewer voices at supper, fewer feet on the floorboards, fewer shadows by the fire. Mother still cooked for an army, but there were only 3 of us left, her father and me. I tried to fill the silence with my own voice, but the walls remembered. They remembered the laughter, the shouting, the songs, and they ached with emptiness. Letters came, yes, sometimes with money, sometimes with promises. One day we will all be together again. One day we will bring you here. One day we will bring you here. One day we will bring you here. One day we will rebuild the family home. But one day kept slipping further and further away. At first their letters were full of love and longing, but slowly they began to change. Rosa wrote of new clothes, of parties, of people she met who never carried buckets or bent their backs in fields. My brother wrote of wages and long hours, but also of jealousy, who sent more money, who sacrificed more, who cared more for the family left behind. Love turned into comparison. Comparison turned into bitterness. Distance is not just miles, my child. Distance grows in hearts. And though our family once huddled like sparrows in a nest, we began to fly in different directions, never quite returning. I remember one Christmas when only 2 letters arrived. They both had money, but neither had warmth. Father sat by the fire, the envelopes in his hands, his eyes heavy with disappointment. "They send coins, but not themselves," he muttered. Mother wiped her eyes and said nothing. That night, as the wind howled outside, I realized something. Poverty had not broken us. Leaving had. My child, when you think of family, remember this: distance tests love more than hunger ever could. And sometimes the ones who leave carry not just their own hopes, but also the seeds of division. We did not know it then, but the bonds that once seemed unbreakable had already begun to fray. Ah, my dear, when one bird flies away from the nest, you still hear its song in the distance. But when all the birds leave, the nest grows hollow and the silence is heavy. After Rosa and my younger brother left, the house seemed too big for us, 3 who remained. The walls echoed with memories, the table looked too wide, and the nights stretched on endlessly. Mother would sit by the window every evening, as if expecting someone to walk down the road carrying a suitcase and laughter. Father tried to stay strong, but I would catch him polishing Matteo's old boots when he thought no one was watching. As for me, I kept busy, fetching water, mending clothes, tending the garden, but every quiet moment was filled with longing. Letters continued to arrive. Some were cheerful, with news of jobs, apartments, and friends they had made in the new countries. Others carried bitterness, complaints about how hard life was abroad, how unfair employers were, how little they earned compared to how much they sent back. The money was welcome, of course. It bought shoes, blankets, even a little meat now and then. But the words in those letters carried both comfort and poison. And then the worst thing happened. A fight, not with fists, but with ink and paper. It began with Rosa. She had found success singing in small cafes, her laughter still charming strangers as it once charmed neighbors. In her letter, she wrote that she sent more money than anyone else, and she hinted, just a hint, that maybe the others were not doing enough. Matteo, proud and hard-working, did not take this kindly. His reply came sharp, accusing her of being selfish, of chasing applause instead of family duty. The younger brother, caught between them, added his own bitterness, claiming he was the one sacrificing the most, working 16 hours a day in a factory. Letter by letter, love turned to accusation. Accusation turned to resentment, and resentment grew into silence. Months passed with no word. When the next letter finally arrived, it was cold, almost like a stranger had written it. No warm greetings, no affectionate memories, just business. Money enclosed, promises of someday, but no love. Mother wept over those letters. I raised them to love one another, she said, wringing her hands. Why do they fight so far away when they have no one else but each other? Father grew bitter. Distance, he spat one evening, turns blood into water. And me? I tried to hope. I prayed every night for them to remember who they were. But hope is a fragile thing, child. It flickers like a candle, and the winds of pride can snuff it out easily. Then came the years of true silence. No letters, no money, nothing. Perhaps they were too ashamed. Perhaps life swallowed them whole. Or perhaps, God forgive them, they simply forgot us. We heard rumors through neighbors who knew other immigrants. One said Mateo was working on ships now, crossing oceans. Another claimed Rosa had married a man of wealth, far older than her. Someone else said my younger brother had moved inland to work in the mines. But these were just fragments, whispers carried across borders, and none of them reached us directly. We were left in the dark, imagining their lives, fearing the worst. During those years, our little home became both sanctuary and prison. Mother aged quickly. Her hair turned white. Her hands grew frail. Her eyes dimmed with waiting. Father grew quieter, smoking his pipe by the door, staring at roads that never brought his children back. And me? I worked. I cared for them. I kept the house standing. But inside, I carried a hollowness that words cannot describe. Do you know what it is, child, to live with absence? It is like setting a place at the table that never gets filled. It is like hearing phantom footsteps on the stairs, only to realize the stairs are empty. It is like dreaming every night of voices, then waking to silence. We survived, of course. Humans always do. The garden gave us food, the neighbors lent us help, and I found small jobs sewing and cleaning. But survival is not the same as living. Living is when joy fills your lungs like fresh air. Survival is when you breathe only enough not to die. Years slipped by. Seasons changed, and with each passing year, hope shrank. Father passed away first. He died with a pipe in his hand, sitting by the fire. I like to think he dreamed of the children returning, though his last words were simply, "Too far, they are too far." Mother followed some years later, her final breath a whisper of names she longed to see again. And then there was only me. Alone in the house once so full of life, I wandered from room to room, touching walls that had absorbed decades of laughter and tears. I lit candles at night, not because I needed the light, but because I could not bear the darkness pressing in. Yet even then, even in loneliness, I refused to let bitterness devour me. For I believed stubbornly that families can break but also mend. That love, though buried under years of silence, can still be dug up if someone has the courage to reach for it. And, my dear, I was right. It began with a single envelope. Faded, creased, as if it had traveled 1,000 miles through storms. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, a letter written in Mateo's familiar hand, older now, shaky but still his. "My sister," it began, "I do not know if you will forgive me. I have carried guilt for too long. Life has been hard, but harder still is knowing I left you behind. I think often of the house, of father's pipe, of mother's cooking, of us children laughing in the fields. I fear I will never see it again, but I must try. Will you write back?" Oh, my child, when I read those words, I wept so hard the ink blurred. After decades of silence, here was my brother's voice again, reaching across oceans, asking not for money, not for favors, but for forgiveness. I wrote back at once, pouring my heart onto the page. I told him of father's death, of mother's last years, of the loneliness of the house, of my longing to see his face again before I too grew old, and I forgave him. With every word I forgave him. Weeks later, another letter arrived from Rosa. Different and writing, the same weight of regret. She confessed her mistakes, her pride, her foolish choices. She begged to know if it was too late, and then, as if some unseen hand had pulled invisible strings, letters began to arrive from the others as well. Slowly at first, then more often. Like drops of water breaking a drought, their words returned, tentative, uncertain, but filled with longing. It was as though the silence had finally cracked, and through the cracks, love began to seep back in. My dear, life has a strange rhythm. It stretches out long and silent for years, and then suddenly, everything happens at once, like rain after a drought. That was how it felt when the letters began to arrive. At first they were stiff, formal, careful. No one dared to speak of the fights from long ago, as if silence could erase them. Rosa wrote about her children, who spoke more English than our mother tongue. Matteo described the aches of his bones from decades at sea. My younger brother, now gray-haired himself, sent pages filled with stories of mines and dust and lungs that struggled for breath. Each letter carried a mixture of sorrow and longing. They asked about the house, about the village, about the neighbors who were long gone. They wanted to know if the fig tree still grew in the yard, if the well still gave sweet water, if the church bell still rang on Sundays. It was as though in their minds time had stopped in our little home, and they longed to step back into it. But letters, my dear, are not enough. You cannot hug ink on a page. You cannot hear laughter in careful handwriting. You cannot feel warmth through paper, no matter how many tears stain it. And so came the moment that changed everything. Rosa wrote, "Perhaps it is time. Perhaps we should come home before it is too late." When I read those words, my heart pounded like a drum. After so many years of silence, anger, and distance, could it be possible? Could my siblings truly walk through the door again, older, perhaps more fragile, but still mine? I wrote back at once, urging them to come. "The house is still here," I said. "I am still here. And there is room at the table for all of us, if only you are willing." But not everyone agreed so easily. Matteo was hesitant. He feared the shame of returning after abandoning his parents. My younger brother worried about money, about health, about travel. Even Rosa, bold as she was, confessed she trembled at the thought of facing the ghosts of our childhood home. Yet beneath all their doubts, there was a spark, a desire, a hunger for belonging, for forgiveness, for home. Weeks passed, and I lived with a restless heart, checking the mailbox each morning as though it were a lifeline. And then, one day, 3 letters arrived together, as if fate had aligned. Each one carried the same promise: "I will come." Child, I cannot explain the storm that swept through me that day. Joy and fear, hope and dread, excitement and terror, all at once. For with reunion comes risk. What if old wounds reopened? What if forgiveness was only a dream? What if the years apart had changed us beyond recognition? But I chose hope. I cleaned the house from top to bottom, scrubbing floors, patching curtains, polishing the old table until it shone. I lit candles in every room, as if preparing for a sacred ceremony. And in a way, it was sacred. It was the return of family, the mending of blood, the resurrection of love. I went to the market, bought flour and spices, prepared dishes I had not cooked in years, the kind mother once made when the whole house was full. As I kneaded dough with aching hands, I whispered prayers into the bread, asking God to bless the gathering, to bind us together again, to let peace settle where anger once lived. And then I waited. Each passing day was heavy, each night restless. I sat by the window just as Mother once had, listening for footsteps, for laughter, for voices calling my name. The house no longer felt empty. It pulsed with anticipation, with memory, with the promise of what was to come. My child, that is where the first part of this story ends, not in reunion, not yet, but in the trembling before it. In the moment when hope stands at the doorway, uncertain but ready. For life teaches us this: reconciliation is not a single act. It is a journey, slow and fragile, like planting seeds after a harsh winter and waiting to see if they will grow. And so I waited. With my heart in my throat and my hands clasped tight, I waited for the sound of footsteps on the road, for the sight of faces I had not seen in decades. Would they come? Would love conquer pride? Would our family, broken and scattered, find its way back to the table once more? I did not know then. All I had was faith. And faith, my dear, is often enough. Ah, my dear, silence is a strange companion. It can be comforting, like the hush of dawn before birds begin to sing, or it can be cruel, pressing against your ears until you hear nothing but your own heartbeat echoing in the emptiness. For many years after my brothers and sister left, silence was all I had. When your loved ones are far away, you expect distance, yes, but you never expect silence. At first, I tried to be patient. I told myself that life is busy, that letters take time, that perhaps their work or their families demanded more of them than I understood. But months turned into years, and the mailbox grew dusty with waiting. The silence became heavier, like a blanket laid over my chest. Mother used to sit by the window, her body frail, but her eyes sharp, scanning the road each day as though she could summon her children with her gaze. Maybe today, she would whisper. But today never came. Her hands, once so quick to braid hair or knead dough, grew still in her lap, and though her body was with us, her spirit often drifted away, chasing memories of when the house was full of children's laughter. Father, on the other hand, grew stern. His disappointment hardened into anger, though I believe it was only his way of hiding heartbreak. He rarely spoke of the children who had gone, but sometimes I'd find him staring at Mateo's old fishing pole or Rosa's abandoned shawl with a look that cut me deeper than words. He carried his grief in silence, and it aged him faster than time. And then death came. First to Father, sudden and quiet. He was sitting in his chair by the fire, pipe in hand as though merely resting. But when I called his name, his eyes no longer met mine. His body was still, yet his face seemed almost peaceful, as though he had finally found the reunion he longed for in his dreams. Mother lasted longer, though the years wore her down. Her bones ached, her memory frayed, and she called out names that echoed only in the past. In her final days, she would reach out with trembling hands, whispering, my children," as though they were standing just out of sight. When she passed, it was with their names on her lips and tears in her eyes. Do you know what it is to bury your parents alone, child? To stand in the churchyard with no brothers or sisters beside you, only neighbors offering polite condolences. I held the weight of their absence in my arms like a stone. My siblings had left with promises of return, but the years had stolen those promises and left me with graves instead. After Mother's passing, the silence became unbearable. The house seemed too large for one person, its corners filled with ghosts. I would hear Rosa's laughter echo in the kitchen, Mateo's footsteps in the hall, my younger brother's voice humming a tune in the garden. But when I turned, the rooms were empty. The walls remembered, even when the people had forgotten. I busied myself, because work is the only medicine for loneliness. I tended the garden, though the soil grew stubborn in my old age. I sewed clothes for neighbors, mended their linens, polished their brass, anything to keep my hands moving. But work fills the hands, not the heart. Nights were the hardest. When the fire dimmed and the world grew quiet, memories crept in. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself if my brothers and sister ever thought of me, if they still carried our family inside them, or if I had become just another name buried in their past. Sometimes bitterness rose in me, sharp as vinegar. Why did they leave? Why did they forget us? Why did I give so much love, only to be repaid with silence? But then I would remember Mother's face, the way she prayed every night for her children to return, and I would force myself to soften. Anger is heavy, my dear. Carry it long enough, and it will break your back. Forgiveness, even if unasked for, is the only thing that keeps the soul light. Still, the years stretched on, each one colder than the last. Neighbors aged, friends moved away or died, and the village itself seemed to shrink. Children I had once rocked in my arms grew into adults with families of their own, while I remained the solitary figure in the old house at the edge of the road. Some pitied me, others whispered, but none could fill the empty chairs at my table. I prayed often. Not for riches, not for health, not even for long life, but simply for reunion. For the chance to look into my siblings' eyes once more, to remind them of who we were before pride and distance carved canyons between us. Let me see them before I die, I begged the heavens. Even once, even briefly, let me tell them they are loved, so they may carry that truth when I am gone. And then, just when I thought my prayers had dissolved into the air unheard, something stirred. A letter. One letter after so many years of silence. It came from Matteo. His handwriting was shaky, his words uncertain, but his heart was poured into every line. He spoke of regret, of longing, of the weight of guilt that had followed him across oceans. He asked if it was too late to mend what had been broken. When I read it, I wept as though the letter itself were a living hand reaching through time to touch me. My dear, it was as if a window had opened in a house long closed, letting fresh air rush in. Not long after, Rosa wrote as well. Her letter was filled with confessions, stories of mistakes, of pride, of choices she wished she could undo. She asked if I still thought of her, if I still loved her, if I could forgive her. And then came the younger brother's letter, heavy with sorrow, admitting that he had carried anger for too long, and it had turned into chains. He begged to break those chains, if only I would allow it. It was as though silence itself had cracked open, and through those cracks, love began to flow back in. But letters are only the beginning, child. They heal a little, but they cannot replace faces, voices, or embraces. Words on paper cannot wipe away decades of absence. They cannot hold your hand when you cry. They cannot cook a meal beside you or sing the songs you once shared. And so, as I sat with those letters in my lap, I realized this was not enough. If the family was to be mended, if love was truly to return, we would need more than words. We would need to meet again, to look one another in the eye, to forgive not with pens but with hearts. That was the moment the idea of reunion was born, not as a dream, but as a plan. My dear, when rain finally falls after a long drought, the earth drinks it greedily, desperate for every drop. That is what those letters felt like to me, drops of love falling on soil that had been dry for decades. But drops alone do not make a harvest. They are only the beginning. I sat at my table, the 3 letters spread before me like treasures. Matteo's regret, Rosa's confession, my younger brother's plea, all 3 spoke of sorrow, of guilt, of longing. For years I had prayed for such words, and now that they were here, my heart was both joyful and afraid. Could words truly heal wounds so deep? Could love grow again after being buried so long? I wrote back to each of them. My hands trembled with age, but my heart guided the pen. I told them I forgave them, not because they had asked perfectly, not because the past could be erased, but because forgiveness was the only way forward. I reminded them of our childhood, of the games in the fields, of the songs around the table, of mother's hands braiding Rosa's hair and father's voice teaching Matteo to fish. I told them the house was still here, waiting, and so was I. Weeks turned into months. More letters came. They grew warmer, fuller, braver. Rosa sent photographs of her children, grown now, with faces that carried traces of our family's features. Matteo described his grandchildren with pride, though he admitted with pain that he had missed most of his own children's childhoods because of the sea. My younger brother shared stories of hardships and of his wife, now gone, whose memory still haunted him. Slowly, a rhythm returned to our communication. Letters came often, sometimes twice a week. I began to look forward to the postman's steps on the road, my heart quickening each time I saw him approach. The silence that had once suffocated me was broken, replaced with words flowing across oceans. But even as joy grew, so did longing. I wanted to see them, not just their handwriting. I wanted to hear their voices, not just imagine them. And so I wrote what had been forming in my heart. Come home, not in letters, not in promises. Come home in person, before time steals the chance from us again. At first there was hesitation. Matteo worried about the journey. His health was fragile, his bones stiff, his breath short. Rosa admitted she was afraid of facing the house where she had once stormed away in pride. My younger brother wondered how he could afford such a journey after years of scraping by. But beneath every worry was a flicker of desire. They all wanted it, my dear. They all longed to come home. One day, a letter from Rosa arrived that carried a new kind of energy. I have been speaking with my children, she wrote. They insist I must return, that I must not let fear or pride stop me. They want to see where I grew up, where my mother sang, where my father prayed, where my sister still waits. Perhaps the time has come. Soon after, Matteo wrote that his grandson had offered to travel with him to help him make the journey safely. Perhaps I am old, but I am not yet dead, he said, with a spark of humor I had not seen in his words for years. And then came the younger brother's letter. If you will have me, I will come. I cannot undo the years, but I can hold your hand before the end. My dear, when I read those 3 letters, I pressed them to my chest and wept. After decades of waiting, the dream of reunion was no longer a dream. It was becoming a plan. The preparations began quietly, almost cautiously. Rosa sent word of the documents she would need, the routes she might take. Matteo's grandson wrote to me, asking about the village, about lodging, about the best way to reach our house. My younger brother's letter included a list of dates, times, questions about roads and weather. The details of travel may seem small, but to me they were miracles, proof that this reunion was real, not just words. I too prepared. I scrubbed the walls, polished the old wood, aired out rooms that had been closed for years. I stitched fresh curtains, repaired old quilts, planted flowers in the garden so the house would greet them with beauty. My hands ached, my back bent, but I worked with joy. Every sweep of the broom, every stitch of thread, every seed in the soil was a prayer. Let love return here. Neighbors began to whisper. Some doubted. They will not come, they said. Too many years have passed. People do not change. Others kinder offered help, bringing fresh linens, firewood, even paint for the shutters. They said the house should look alive again for the day when family walked through the door. At night I lay awake with a heart that raced like a girl's. I pictured their faces, older now but still familiar. I imagined the sound of Rosa's laugh, the warmth of Matteo's embrace, the tears in my younger brother's eyes. I wondered if we would fall into each other's arms or hesitate at first, cautious strangers made by time. There were fears, of course. What if old arguments resurfaced? What if pride returned? What if the years apart had carved us into people who could no longer fit together? But hope, my dear, is stronger than fear. And mine was burning bright. The letters grew more frequent as the days drew near. Rosa wrote, I have packed Mother's old shawl. I want to wear it when I step into the house again. Matteo wrote, Tell me if the fig tree still stands. I want to sit beneath it one more time. My younger brother wrote, Do you think Mother will forgive me, even if she is gone? I told them all the same, Yes, she has forgiven you already. She always did. And then came the final letters, the ones that carried not just words, but dates. Dates of ships, of trains, of flights. Dates when their footsteps would fall once more on the road that led to our house. Oh, child, how do I describe the feeling of those moments? It was as though the years of waiting, the decades of silence, the weight of loneliness, all of it cracked open and light poured in. For the first time in so long, I felt truly alive. The sparks of reconnection had grown into a flame. The reunion was no longer just a hope. It was coming. And so, I prepared not just my house, but my heart. For reunion is not just about meeting again. It is about forgiving, about letting go, about choosing love over pride. I whispered to myself again and again, when they walk through that door, there will be no anger, only love. Because, my dear, life is too short for anything else. My dear, there are days in life you never forget. Days that carve themselves into your heart, so that even when memory fades, their feeling remains forever. The day of our reunion was such a day. It began quietly. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, soft and golden. The house was clean, the garden blooming, the table set with bread and fruit and coffee. My hands trembled as I arranged the chairs, each one waiting for someone I had not seen in decades. I kept stopping to breathe, whispering to myself, They are coming. After all these years, they are truly coming. First came Rosa. I heard the wheels of a car crunch on the gravel, the sound of doors opening, voices low with hesitation. Then footsteps on the path. I went to the door, and there she stood. My sister. Her hair was silver now, her face lined with years, but her eyes, the same brown eyes of our mother, were shining with tears. We looked at each other for a long moment, neither speaking. Then she broke. Sister, she whispered, her voice shaking, and I opened my arms. We fell into each other, holding on as though the years of anger had never existed. We sobbed, our shoulders trembling, our tears soaking into each other's clothes. I'm sorry, she cried. I should never have left. I should never have stayed away. And I whispered back, It doesn't matter anymore. You're here. That's all that matters now. Not long after, another sound reached us, the slow, careful steps of an old man leaning on another's arm. Matteo, my brother, frail now, his hair white as snow, his back bent. His grandson guided him gently toward the house. When I saw him, my heart leapt. He stopped at the doorway, gripping the frame as if afraid the house might reject him. Come in, brother, I said softly. My voice broke as I added, This is still your home. He looked at me, his eyes wet, and for a moment I saw not an old man, but the boy who had once fished with me by the river, who had teased me and protected me. He shuffled forward, and when he reached me, we embraced. His body shook as he whispered, I thought I had lost you forever. Never, I said. Not forever. And then came the last, my younger brother. His arrival was quieter, almost hidden, as if shame still clung to him. He carried no bags, only a small photo of his wife tucked in his hand. When I opened the door to him, he bowed his head. "Do you still want me here?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I took his hand, placed it against my chest, and said, "I have wanted you here every single day." And with that, his tears flowed, and so did mine. The house, once so empty, was alive again. Voices filled the rooms, footsteps echoed on the floors, the smell of coffee and bread mingled with laughter and sobs. We sat at the table, Rosa beside me, Matteo across from me, our younger brother at the end, and for the first time in decades, we were together. At first, silence hung between us, heavy with memories. Then Rosa spoke. "I left because I was angry. I thought I could live without family, but years taught me something. Wealth, pride, success. None of it matters if you eat alone at night. I was wrong." Matteo nodded slowly. I chased the sea, thinking it would give me freedom. But the sea took more than it gave. It gave me distance, but it stole my time with you. I would give everything to return those years. Our younger brother looked down at his hands. I let pride blind me. I chose to defend myself instead of our family. I wasted years trying to prove I was right. But being right means nothing when you are alone. Their confessions were heavy, but my heart did not want to cling to them. I took a deep breath and said, "We cannot change the past, but we can decide what we do with the time left. Today I choose love. Do you?" One by one they nodded, tears streaming. And in that moment, the weight lifted. The bitterness, the silence, the years, it all melted away. We spent the day sharing stories. Rosa showed me pictures of her children and grandchildren, each face carrying traces of our parents. Matteo's grandson told tales of his grandfather's stubborn courage, making us laugh. My younger brother shared memories of his late wife, his voice trembling with both sorrow and pride. And I told them about the house, how it had stood through storms, how I had kept it alive, waiting for this day. When the sun set, we went outside to the garden. The fig tree still stood, tall and strong, its branches heavy with fruit. Matteo sat beneath it, running his hand along the bark, whispering, "Just like us, old scarred, but still standing." That night, as the stars came out, we sang the old songs. Our voices cracked, but together they formed harmony. The house, the walls, the very air seemed to hum with joy. For the first time in so long, I felt whole. And then, as the laughter faded, I spoke the lesson that had grown in my heart through all those years of waiting. "My dear ones," I said, my voice steady though my heart trembled, "life gives us many gifts, work, wealth, adventure, success. But they all fade. What remains is family. We wasted years chasing pride, chasing distance, chasing things that never truly mattered. But tonight proves one thing. It is never too late, not to forgive, not to love, not to come home." I looked at each of them, Rosa, Matteo, my younger brother, and then at their children, their grandchildren. "Do not repeat our mistakes," I told them. "Do not let arguments steal decades. Do not let pride become more important than love. When you have family, hold them close. Speak the words before it is too late. Forgive quickly. Love deeply. Because in the end, family is all we truly carry with us." The garden was silent. Even the youngest of the children listened with wide eyes, as if they understood the weight of those words. And in that silence, I knew the lesson had taken root. We slept that night under the same roof, the house filled with breaths and dreams, as it was always meant to be. And when morning came, I rose early, watching the sunlight spill across their faces as they stirred awake. I whispered to myself, "This is what peace feels like." So, my dear, that is the story I wanted you to know. A story of pride and distance, of silence and regret, but also of forgiveness, reunion, and love. A story of how even broken families can be made whole again if only they choose it. Remember this lesson, child. Life is short, but love is strong. Do not waste the years. Do not wait until it is almost too late. Call your family, forgive your family, embrace your family. Because one day you will be old, sitting by the window as I do now, and you will ask yourself what truly mattered, and the answer always will be love. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and press the little bell icon so you never miss what comes next.